Welcome to Up on Game presents Taylor Scouting. Coach Randy Taylor is bringing his 40-plus years of knowledge to you. This is Taylor Scouting. And now, here's Coach Randy Taylor.
Hey, this is Coach Taylor, Coach Randy Taylor from Taylor Scouting and Up on Game Network. I get confused of all the places I've been. Up on Game Network, and we're going to talk about some kicking. We're going to talk about football, starting a business, a lot of different things with our guest, Chris Saylor. What I want to do now is just let you know that you can follow us on any of our websites. You can go to Up on Game Presents Taylor Scouting and watch this podcast. You can get our podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you get your podcasts. And so we'll get right into this, talking to Chris Saylor, my guy, one of the most talented, smart, tough-minded guys that I know, and I think kickers are. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. So Chris Saylor is a guru, in my opinion, right? And I had Chris Rubio on last week, who is also a guru in his own right. But Chris has done some things in this industry that a lot of people wish they could have done. And so this podcast is going to be talking about kicking and punting and other things with Chris Saylor. He was a 3-tool kicker at UCLA. I don't know if that's the right term, 5-tool in baseball, whatever it is, which is rare and maybe extinct in these days. A field goal kicker, kickoff guy, and punter back in the late 90s, along with Chris Rubio. And I told Chris Rubio that probably the best specialist group in the country at the time. And he said it was best in the world. So that might be true as well. We're going to talk specialists and the positions of kicker and punter. And I think that those positions are the most skilled of any in football. They talk about skilled players. They talk about this and that, and the receiver and the running back and the quarterback. My opinion, I believe the kicker especially is the most skilled position in the sport. So I want to welcome a skilled kicker, Chris Saylor, and want to welcome you to the podcast today, Taylor Scouting Podcast. Chris Saylor, thanks for joining us, buddy.
I appreciate it, Randy. I apologize. You had Rubio on a few days ago. I apologize for anything he said.
He was actually fun. He's got a great personality. So yeah. We did have some fun, and we did not throw you under the bus at all.
Shocking.
It was very clean. So maybe we'll do it to him, but we'll see how it goes. Could you give us your brief autobiography? How did you get here?
Sure. It just, I think all things happen for a reason, I guess. But my parents were born and raised in Germany. So I grew up a soccer player, played soccer my entire life. Didn't even really, think about, consider football as a young athlete growing up, and really kind of just backed into it. At high school, during a PE class, you start the game and you kick the ball down the field and you kind of chase down the field to start the game. And I did that. And the PE coach said, "Hey, man, I've never seen a leg like that. You got to come, be on the football team for us." So that was freshman year, and by sophomore year, he got me out there. My first 2 years really at Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, I only kicked really like maybe once a week during practice, and then game nights. Never practiced it. Never kicked the ball in the off season. My whole focus was basically on soccer. And then my senior year, we just happened to have a really good team, and we kicked a lot of field goals and started getting better at it, and ended up setting a national record with 22 field goals in one season, including, I think, 7 or 8 over 50 yards. And that's when the recruiting started to kind of go crazy for me. And that kind of brought me to UCLA, and the rest is history.
That's when Gary Bernardi found in. and started recruiting you. He was the guy, right, back in the
Yeah,
Notre Dame days?
exactly. And he had a history, I think, a little bit with Burroughs High School here. So he's
Yeah.
familiar with kind of the Burbank area where I grew up, and yeah, we hit it off right away. And then I think that also the fact that Terry Donahue, who was a coach at the time, was also a Notre Dame High School alumni. So he had never really recruited the school, and he took a big interest in me as well because we obviously went to the same high school.
A lot of connections. And now, I think I read that you chose Illinois because of they would let you kick and play soccer. Did other schools do that as well?
Yeah, you said Illinois, by the way. I went to UCLA.
Oh, UCLA, my bad.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm an Illinois guy. You're the UCLA guy.
Exactly. No, I was recruited pretty much nationally as a soccer player. Considered a few schools for soccer, but then really when football came around, as you know, football is full ride, where soccer was kind of more partials and different types of opportunities. And one of the big reasons why it's such a strong interest in UCLA was because they were also recruiting me kind of at the same time without knowing in soccer. Ziggy Schmidt was the coach at the time, famous coach, and he really liked my skill as a soccer player. So when Coach Bernardi started recruiting me, I kind of put the two together, and then Terry Donahue and Ziggy Schmidt kind of worked side by side and recruiting me there, and using that as kind of a tool to get me to commit to them.
What was Bjorn Merton the guy that you followed? Was he kicking at UCLA when you were recruited?
Yeah, so Bjorn was a sophomore when I was a high school senior. So when I came in, he was a returning junior at the time. So they had told me, he had been an All-American his freshman year, and they said, the sophomore year was good. It wasn't quite as good as freshman year, and they said it'll be open competition, but of course you're going against a really good player. So what they didn't tell me is that they were going to count on me to punt. I had no idea that I would be punting. I really didn't even work on it in the off season. But they weren't happy with the current punting situation. They said, "Hey, you're an athlete, get out there." So I ended up being, the starting punter as a freshman when really I'd never really even worked on
it. Being an athlete helps, and you always were a punter that looked like you were striking the ball like a kicker. Is that pretty fair to say?
Yeah, so doing it the wrong way, essentially. Yeah. No, ultimately, I was always a kicker. Punting is a very different motion. So I got away with learning how to do it on the job, so to speak. But the film between my freshman and senior year looks a lot better in my senior year, but it still wasn't perfect. And by no means was I going to be an NFL punter. Kicking was always kind of my strength. But we got through it. We got by with it. And 1 year I was even an All-American doing it. So it was pretty cool.
How about that? The kickers and punters aren't normally signed to scholarships, and you are in a unique situation. What advice do you have for those kids? I know it's gotten better that more kickers are now signed. I don't know if they're signing strictly punters that way, and I know long snappers may be down the road a little bit. But what advice do you have for high school football players with your skills that want to play college ball?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, you said it perfectly, and then it's changed, right? It's changed a ton since I was back in getting recruited myself. Then when I started my business, it was very different than it is now as well, and that it was primarily a walk-on position. I think in my year coming out in '95 out of high school, I believe 3 kickers got scholarships nationwide. By the time I was done, I think it was up to maybe up to about 8 to 10, but ultimately it was still primarily a walk-on position. And then really about 4 to 5 years ago, I'd say right before COVID, it was kind of the height of it. I think we had something like 50 guys a year getting scholarships. So, and that's coming out of high school, either high school or junior college. COVID obviously has changed things a lot, as has the transfer portal that we now have. But primarily my advice is to work on the craft from a young age. I think that become way more competitive because of that carrot, right? The opportunity to get a scholarship. It's not looked down upon anymore like it used to be. The kickers and punters are very athletic people who also a lot of times are stars in other sports. So they come to this position because of the opportunity that's out there. The mistake I think that too many players make is that they focus on going to camps, and they lose focus on the training side of things as they kind of go throughout their high school careers. So I always say, you train, you get ready to come to a camp. You don't just go to camps constantly. But by all means, it's starting early, perfecting the craft early, committing to it year round. And then, one thing that you haven't heard me say is that I also believe in playing other sports. So a mistake you can make is if you try to specialize in this and do this only from, let's say, like, fourth grade or fifth grade. It's difficult to do it that way. I think it's important to train your body to be an athlete. So really the time to specialize in it, as we found, with now 20 plus years of experience doing this, is really kind of during that junior year, right? That's when you got to kind of make up your mind and make your choice. But before that, stay in other sports, focus on your training, develop the technique, and just know that there's so many opportunities out there in this position in this sport.
What in developing the technique and for that position, as well as being an athlete, is there physical training, flexibility, strength training that you would suggest that are important to be that kicker, maybe the D1 kicker, the NFL kicker? What is your philosophy on that?
Sure. First and foremost, you train like an athlete. So I think every athlete has to do that. You take care of your core. You focus on all parts of your body, not just your legs for kicking. And obviously conditioning is very important. So any sort of conditioning you can do, whether it's riding a bike, whether it's jogging, running, whether it's swimming in a swimming pool, keeping our body fit is extremely important. And then really when it comes to specific training for kicking, it's kind of all the above. Like you said, there is a strength training. There's days you're going to lift on the heavier side in the off season, but the focus primarily for kicking is working on explosiveness, right? So it's less weight and more repetitions when you're in control of the weight. And you can explode more readily with the weight as opposed to struggling with the weight to get, let's say, a max rep up. So athlete first, explosive training in the weight room, focus on a lot of off the field stuff would be yoga, Pilates. A lot of our players do that to keep the flexibility up. Resistance training, so swings in a pool, swings with the resistance band. And you kind of put that all together, right, with your kicking, your weightlifting, your conditioning, and then obviously it gets you ready for your upcoming season and your future. So it's all the above.
The mental preparation and mental toughness seems to be a very big part of your position. I've watched you in tough situations, and shoot, I remember Bjorn having a kick against USC, and Coach Toledo did a great job of talking to him about fishing before he went out and kicked the game winner. And so talk about the mental side of the position.
I mean, it's more than half of it, right? I mean, so many players have the talent, the ability, they've worked to get there, but only so many can really do it in games. And it's really something that they can't be taught, kind of comes naturally. I always say that the kickers are kind of like, the party animals, it seems like. It's kind of the characteristics that they have. They're a good time because they tend to not care, right? Get out there and get after it. But for us, it's beating the mental side of it comes in preparation, right? So if you feel like you're prepared and you've worked hard and you trust your swing, generally you're going to do well, right? I mean, nerves aren't going to be able to get to you. We focus a lot on muscle memory training. So it's one swing, it's one way over and over and over again, right? So we do it so many times in training, work the swing so many times that, when those big situations come, the body does nothing else to do but to go through that exact swing. And that's why pros are so great. They worked so hard at perfecting and developing that swing. And then, like I said, preparation, working all off season. So there's a true confidence behind it. One of the questions I ask at all my camps, we always have a part of camp where I let one kid kick for a free camp. I say, okay, this kick's worth basically $400. Who wants the kick? And if we have, let's say, 75 guys standing there, I said, I don't want anyone to raise their hand, but you guys know deep down how many of you want to be called out right now in front of the other 74 players and 150 parents to hit this ball for a free camp, right? And I know that, half of them are probably, shaking, right? And half of them really want it. So a lot of the kids that come to my camps, often they know that part of camp and they're begging for the opportunity. Why? Because they prepared for it. We just talked about, right? Prepared for it in training. But, we call the random guy out and, a lot of times I put my hand on their shoulder and you can feel them shaking, right? Because of the intensity of that big opportunity. So, the reality is that you have to want it. You have to know you want it. and the great ones do. And again, it's not top, but it's a question every coach asks me when it comes to recruiting. I know he can kick. I see him do it at camps, but what tells you he's a guy that can do it in the game, right? And for the most part, doing this now so long, we know the personality. I see the work, the effort they put in the off season when they're training, and we generally get it right. You can tell the ones that aren't ready for it, even though physically they're not ready for it mentally.
I got to tell this one story about how you would come during practice at UCLA. I'd always come up to you and Rubio and see what happened on the soap operas during practice and those kind of things. So you do have that uniqueness of being on your own and kind of the kamikaze guy a little bit, but those are good things to rely on, is that toughness and self-awareness and the process and the fundamentals and those kind of things. Did you have a like some words you said to yourself before every kick? Was there a mantra in your head, or was it just the fundamentals?
Yeah. So, and for the most part, I really put my focus in, during training, off season work, all that. When it came to game time, I wanted to have fun. I wanted to have as little stress, as little pressure as possible. Me and Joey Strikula, who's my roommate and my holder. I know you remember Joey is part of the, part of the battery there. We look up in the crowd and try to find the hottest girl up there and do different things to keep your mind off the actual kick, right? We don't care how far it is. We don't care if it's right hash, left hash, or 45 or 52 or game winner or, opening kick or scores already 50-0. Ultimately it was about, for us, my routine was, having a good time with it. So, even during games, I'm sure Rubio probably told you some stories, but, he'd give me the bird through his legs on a punt, so, different things like that where, we were always having fun. We were always doing something that took our mind off of it. For the course of preparation, you're not that way. When you're developing your swing and you're working on all that, it's work. But for me, it was about that, enjoying it, having a good time, and then having a solid routine. Like, for example, one part of my routine was seeing the Notre Dame high school light post, right? It's one of the drills I did at Notre Dame is I would aim for that target, right? A small target, a light post. Had a big basket on it, had a speaker on it, had my dead foot in there that landed in there. Ultimately I would see that light post in the Rose Bowl. I'd see it in the Big House in Michigan. I'd see it in Tennessee. I'd take it with me to kind of find my target up there in the stands. So, yeah, routine, nice. routine.
Hey, talk about the empire called Chris Saylor Kicking. How did that idea become reality? Give some advice to others who are not just starting a kicking business, but you had to start a business. Talk a little bit about that and how you became successful.
Yeah. So, big thing for me was that I never had an opportunity to go train with anybody. There was really no one available. And, the few guys that were out there, I was unimpressed, let's say, with the kind of coaching that I got. And some of the people that were in the business were just, in it for the wrong reasons, I think. And I kind of found that out when I went from college to pro, right? Trying to claim me as a player as opposed to actually coaching me through, getting better with my technique. So I played professionally, and really as an off-season job, I started to train kickers to make a little bit of money and to do right by them, right? To get players better. And my very first student of all time happened to be named Nick Folk. Okay. So Nick was at Notre Dame High School. He was a senior at the time. Actually, he wasn't a senior. I think he was actually like a freshman or sophomore when I first met him. But as I trained him over the years in Notre Dame, I said, man, this kid's really good, right? He should have something. He was better than I was at that point of his career. And in his mind, he was still playing soccer, just so he had my same exact approach and mentality. And I said, I got to do something for him. I got to help him get a scholarship. So during my All-American year, fortunately for me, I met a lot of people as you went to all the different award shows and the ESPN show and different things. So, I called a few coaches I had met, and I said, I got this guy, Nick Folk, that's really good. He needs a scholarship, and I couldn't even get UCLA to listen. So that says something. But ultimately, after all that, I ended up helping him get a scholarship to the University of Arizona. And, obviously then he went to the Cowboys. He's an all-pro now and one of the best that's ever done it. But that was really the start of it, was the need to help him get a scholarship, because that didn't exist. It wasn't there. And then from there, obviously, as my career wound down, I found more opportunities to help more kids. And I said, I gotta do this, full time. I got to create bigger camps. I got to help guys be seen more often. So, really in '99, I kind of started doing it as a professional, my first year in the pros. And then as a real full-time business was in 2003. And that's when I created, the Las Vegas national event where I had coaches show up in person. And that was kind of the launch, so to speak, on a national business.
And then you moved out of your parents' house, had to get your own pool, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I remember visiting you over there and sitting around by the pool talking about things. But
exactly. Yeah. No, you helped me. You were part of that. You helped me learn all the ins and outs of how to do the business side of things.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's nice of you to say. Well, what's the best way to reach you for your one-on-one kicking or your camps or those kind of things?
Sure. It's a website. So, the website has all of our information, and that's chrissailorkicking.com. And Sailor spelled with an E. So SAILER. And then also we have a massive following on social media. If you look up on Twitter or Instagram or any of the social media pages, if you just look up Chris Sailor or Chris Sailor Kicking, we do a pretty good job of getting tons of information out on social media.
That's great. Hey, I really appreciate you being on with us, and this is such a unique position you have, and what you've done for the business for kickers and everybody else. I'm proud of you and really enjoy watching you and your success. So keep in touch, and we'll get a chance to talk to you down the road. I'm going to close this out here real quick, but wanted to be sure that I thanked you for this and just let you know how impressed I am with you and your organization. So
I appreciate that, Randy. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it, buddy. So just want to say thanks, folks, for watching. You can subscribe to Up on Game Presents for the YouTube channel for Taylor Scouting. You can go to Up on Game Network, and you can find us in the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review us. You can search for Up on Game Network on any social platform. I even found it on Spotify, right? So that's not bad. You can find me at rtaylorfb Scout on Twitter. And, if you DM me, you football players and parents out there and need somebody to evaluate your huddle video and give you some advice, I'm here for you and look forward to doing that. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you on the next show of Taylor Scouting.